This security video from 2016 shows American Otto Warmbier, who was visiting North Korea as a tourist, taking down a propaganda poster in his hotel to take home as a souvenir. But little did he know what he just did was a massive crime. When it was time to leave the country, he was detained and brought into custody, where he was sentenced to 15 years of imprisonment with hard labor for taking down the poster. But just a few short months into his sentence, he fell into a coma. After 17 months in captivity, the US and North Korea came to an agreement and he was freed in June 2017, still in a comatose state. When he arrived back home to Ohio, doctors discovered he had extensive brain damage, possibly due to abuse. And 6 days after his return, he passed away. Many say that North Korea purposefully put him into a coma so that he wouldn't be able to tell anyone what he saw or what was done to him. May Otto Warmbier rest in peace. Here were 3 of the most disturbing communities on Reddit. Just a quick heads up, if you have a sensitive stomach, don't go searching these subreddits. Let's start off with some mild stuff, shall we? The Reddit community r/human toilets is not just a place for pictures and videos of people using others as toilets, but also a meeting place for people who want to be used for those types of bodily functions. We live in 2022, and while some kinks are starting to be widely accepted, this shouldn't be one of them. The subreddit r/beating women is a dedicated community full of photos and videos of women being assaulted, but also discussions on how to beat women and inflict the most pain. And the last one, and the one I do not recommend visiting, is eye bleach. A lot of people make the mistake between eye bleach with an A, which is a subreddit for cute animals, and eye bleach without the A, which is just pure gore, videos and images of cruelty, and much more. You'll definitely need to wash your eyes with bleach after seeing that. If these animal moments weren't recorded, no one would believe it. Part 2. On New Year's Eve in 2012, the people in Norway were confused when thousands of dead fish washed up on a beach. There were so many fish that they weighed an estimated 20 tons. But here's where things get crazy. Before anyone could even count the fish, let alone clean them up, the fish disappeared. No one's sure how these fish all washed up and then disappeared within a few hours. The fish clearly weren't alive as they were no longer in the water. So how on earth did they simply vanish? It makes no sense. According to the World Health Organization, it has recently been reported that an Ebola outbreak has been declared in Uganda. Health officials have found over a dozen cases of the infection, and already over 30 deaths have been attributed to the outbreak. This virus can spread through bodily fluids, and it can take several days for symptoms to appear, time in which the person is contagious. The disease causes both internal and external bleeding and is more often than not fatal. Unfortunately, there is no approved Ebola vaccine yet. This particular outbreak is caused by the Sudan virus, which has a mortality rate ranging anywhere from 20 to 90%. Because there is no vaccine available for this particular strain, authorities are working relentlessly to find the source of the outbreak, but also to isolate those who are currently infected, all in the hopes of containing this outbreak before it spreads more widely. This is probably the most messed up thing I've ever heard. In 2000, during the Sydney Paralympics, the Spanish learning disabled basketball team beat Russia in their final match to win gold. But after the games closed, a member of the team, Carlos Ribagorda, confessed something outrageous to the press. The team was supposed to be made up exclusively of players with an IQ of less than 70, but 10 of their 12 players were actually mentally competent athletes with much higher IQs than the maximum. Apparently, they had all signed up as part of a wider scheme to boost their country's chances of winning. They were even provided with fake medical certificates to help them feign disabilities. Worst of all, for 2 years leading up to the Paralympics, they had trained around the world beating disabled athletes. Shockingly, the mastermind behind the scheme was the president of the Spanish Federation of Sports for the Intellectually Disabled, but he was fined just 5,400 euros after admitting to charges of fraud and embezzlement. While watching the new mind-bending sci-fi show The Peripheral, it got me thinking, if you could see your future and use that information to make changes to your life in the present, would you want to? That's exactly what takes place in this show, where it is the year 2032 and Flynn gets the chance to beta test a new super advanced VR game. Through this simulation, Flynn can transport her consciousness into an AI avatar from an alternate future set in London in 2099, while her physical being remains in the past. The show introduces the concept of future bending, which is when you see what is going to happen in the future and use that information to make changes in your present, thus changing your future. So is this type of future bending actually possible? VR has come a long way over the last few years, allowing us to step into places we could only imagine. Who knows, that along with the known fact that space-time can be bent could one day allow us to experience this type of reality. hopefully sooner rather than later. To see future vending in action, tune into Prime Video to watch the peripheral now. If these animal moments weren't recorded, no one would believe it. On New Year's Eve in 2011, the people in Arkansas, USA were shocked when it began to rain dead ravens. That's right, over 5,000 dead raven birds fell from the sky. This phenomenon remains unexplained to this day. No one is sure how 5,000 birds flying in the sky can suddenly pass away. Scientists found that they passed away from internal trauma, but there were no signs of damage on their outer bodies. There was also no sign that these birds were sick in any way. Here's what would happen if you stopped blinking. You're gonna be surprised with how fast you actually end up going blind. After 1 minute, you will feel slight discomfort, but it will be bearable. After 2 minutes, your eyes will start to tear up in a desperate attempt to lubricate the cornea. After 10 minutes, all kinds of bacteria and dust particles will deposit on your eyes, causing an irritating sensation. After 15 minutes, the blurry vision will increase and you will start to lose your sight. After 30 minutes, due to the dryness, your eyes will bulge out and the pain will feel as if someone is using a tattoo gun on your eyes. After 60 minutes, debris and bacteria growth will make your eyes a junkyard. And due to the dryness, your eyes are now unmovable. After 2 hours, the areas surrounding your eyes have swollen as big as a golf ball. But hey, you've made a new world record for holding it this long. After 4 hours, your cornea is starting to tear open, and your eyes are now under a serious bacterial attack that will soon kill your eyes. After 8 hours, you are completely blind now, and your eyeballs need to be removed to stop the deadly bacteria growth from spreading to the brain. This woman's story is so insane it might make you not want to win the lottery. In 1999, Tonda Dickerson went from being a waiter barely scraping by to a multi-millionaire overnight. While working at a Waffle House in Alabama, Tonda received a lottery ticket as a tip. 6 days later, Tonda realized she had won $10 million. But shortly after winning the money, Tonda's ex-boyfriend Stacy Martin kidnapped her at gunpoint. He was about to kill her when she took his gun and shot him in the chest. Stacy survived the shot and somehow faced 0 charges after kidnapping and trying to kill Tonda. Her bad luck didn't end after the attack, as she was then faced with a lawsuit by her past co-workers. The lawsuit claimed that Tonda made a verbal agreement with her co-workers to split the prize money. Then the guy who gave her the ticket, Edward Seward, also sued her, claiming she promised him a truck if she ever won the lottery. Luckily for Tonda, she won both of the lawsuits. After that, since Tonda was sharing the money with her family, the IRS imposed a gift tax of $771,000 on it. Times streamers were caught cheating. Alex Zedra, the voice actor for Mara in Call of Duty Modern Warfare, live streams on Twitch on a constant basis. She usually has other COD players on her stream with her, in order to boost their channels and help them gain traction. On one of those types of streams, Alex hosted Icy Vixen and soon noticed that this girl was playing way too well. In one instance, Icy Vixen was able to perfectly aim at an enemy through a hill, which made Alex question the legitimacy of her COD skills. It seems that Vixen was using either wall hacks or a namebot. Both of these hacks are banned by Call of Duty. And after Alex did some digging, she found out that Vixen was indeed using hacks in order to gain an advantage in COD. Once caught, Twitch shut down her channel. The backlash that resulted from Alex outing Vixen made her delete all of her social media accounts. Players and Twitch users then uncovered some of Vixen's old gameplay footage, in which it can be clearly seen that her aim was perfect even when her hands were nowhere near her setup. This man is a murderer, cannibal, and necrophile who never served any jail time for his crimes. Yes, you heard that right. Issei Sagawa is known for killing Renee Hartvelt in Paris in 1981. He killed the woman in her own apartment, had sex with her corpse, then consumed various parts of her body. All this while taking pictures of the corpse at each and every stage. But when he tried to dispose of the remains, he got caught by the French police. After being held for 2 years awaiting trial, Sagawa was found legally insane and unfit to stand trial by the French judge. So instead, he was admitted to a mental institution. But because of the publicity his crimes got, and the fact that some people started treating him like some sort of celebrity, the French decided to deport him back to Japan. There in the Matsuzawa hospital in Tokyo, he was found by doctors to actually be sane. But as the charges against Sagawa in France had been dropped, and the French court reports were sealed, he couldn't legitimately be detained in Japan. He was released from the hospital on August 12, 1986, and has remained free ever since, contrary to widespread criticism. This man managed to fake a coma for 2 years so he could avoid going to jail. After being found guilty in 2012 of stealing 40,000 pounds from his dementia-ridden neighbor, Alan Knight would start to pretend he was paraplegic and sometimes would fall into a coma. Conveniently, this happened every time the authorities visited him. This fake in-and-out coma lasted for 2 years, in which Knight had admitted himself into a hospital for 10 weeks and managed to convince even the doctors of this mysterious illness, meaning he laid there without moving or opening his eyes for almost 2 months. Eventually, 2 years later, police were finally able to find CCTV footage of Allen out shopping and images on his computer of him being just fine. The picture showed him and his wife on holidays, at weddings, Legoland, and many other places where a person with a coma would not be able to go. Allen was jailed for 4.5 years in November 2014 on fraud and forgery charges. People who outlived insane prison sentences. On May 5th, 1975, Otis Johnson was walking down the street when he was stopped and searched by officers in Harlem, New York. The officers alleged Otis fit the description of a man involved in a nearby shooting of a police officer. The description only said that the man was wearing a tan jacket, but that was enough to convince the officers of Johnson's guilt. Somehow, despite a glaring lack of evidence or credible eyewitnesses, Johnson was sentenced to 25 years to life for the attack he was accused of. His good behavior made him eligible for parole 9 times, and during several of his parole hearings, he was told that if he just confessed, he could walk free. Johnson clearly had a backbone made out of pure steel, because each time he refused to confess to a crime he hadn't committed. Fortunately, his 9th parole hearing in 2014 was positive and he was finally released. That means he had been in prison for almost 40 years, all because he was wearing a tan jacket. This woman's story is so insane it might make you not want to win the lottery. In 1999, Tonda Dickerson went from being a waiter barely scraping by to a multi-millionaire overnight. While working at a Waffle House in Alabama, Tonda received a lottery ticket as a tip. 6 days later, Tonda realized she had won $10 million. But shortly after winning the money, Tonda's ex-boyfriend Stacy Martin kidnapped her at gunpoint. He was about to kill her when she took his gun and shot him in the chest. Stacy survived the shot and somehow faced 0 charges after kidnapping and trying to kill Tonda. Her bad luck didn't end after the attack, as she was then faced with a lawsuit by her past co-workers. The lawsuit claimed that Tonda made a verbal agreement with her co-workers to split the prize money. Then the guy who gave her the ticket, Edward Seward, also sued her, claiming she promised him a truck if she ever won the lottery. Luckily for Tonda, she won both of the lawsuits. After that, since Tonda was sharing the money with her family, the IRS imposed a gift tax of $771,000 on it. This man was a rogue serial killer, but now he's a YouTuber. Pedro Rodriguez Fillo started to take lives at 14 years old when he killed the vice mayor of Alfinas with a shotgun for firing his father. While he was on the run, he met Maria Olympia. They quickly fell in love and got engaged. Unfortunately, soon after that, Maria was brutally murdered by rival gang members, so Pedro set out to seek vengeance. He infiltrated a wedding arranged by the rival gang leader and massacred 7 gang members, injuring many more. Soon Pedro got the news that his father was in jail for killing his mother, so he visited him in prison and killed him by stabbing him 22 times. He then carved out his father's heart and bit a piece of it. When he was rearrested in 1973, he claimed the life of 47 inmates. Even though he officially killed 71 people, he was only sentenced to 30 years in prison, since Brazil's maximum prison sentence is 30 years no matter the crime. After spending 34 years of his life in prison, he was released for the final time in 2018, and now runs a YouTube channel to prove he has a good side. Movie scenes you thought were CGI but are actually practical effects. In this scene from the first Spider-Man movie where Peter Parker acquires his spidey senses, Peter saves Mary Jane from falling when she slips on a spilled drink, and also catches her lunch tray with all its contents. This whole sequence was real and no CGI was used in the making. It took Tobey Maguire 16 hours and 156 takes to get this shot. Weightlessness is often shot using CGI in space movies, but director Ryan Howard wanted to keep it real in Apollo 13. He used a KC-135 straddle tanker for achieving 0 gravity. A single flight provided the film crew with just 20 seconds of weightlessness, and it took the film crew 6 months to get all the 0 gravity shots. Now, we all know Marvel is known for their extensive use of CGI, but the ending skydiving scene from Iron Man 3 was shot without CGI. The production recruited the Red Bull skydiving team to act out all the roles in the scene, and filming the sequence took almost 40 jumps in a span of 6 days. This is a plague doctor from the 17th century, and believe it or not, this ridiculous costume ended up saving these doctors' lives, but not in the way you might think. You see, these doctors were hired by cities during bubonic plague breakouts, and at the time, it was believed that this plague was caused by bad air, so they stuffed a bunch of spices into a beak to act as a respirator. They also wore a long gown coated in wax to prevent this bad air from sticking to them. Now, they were wrong about this bad air theory, as the plague was actually caused by fleas. but because they coated their gowns in wax, it prevented the fleas from nesting on them, which ended up saving a lot of these doctors' lives. This is what the last 24 hours of a death row prisoner looks like. First, the inmate is woken bright and early so they can make their last phone calls to friends and family, while the equipment in the death chamber is tested, including either the gurney straps or the electric chair's components. The inmate is then given a budget of $15 to $40 for their last meal, and they eat it at around 4 p.m. But in some states, prisoners no longer get to pick their last meal at all, so they only get the usual prison food. Next, both the victim and the condemned friends and family wait in the witness room for lethal injection. The prisoner is told to lay down on the gurney and is tied down by a team. Doctors don't perform executions because this goes against their code of ethics, so a special team administers the drugs. Sometimes inmates make a final statement, then the warden gives a signal to the executioner, and as the day ends, so does the prisoner's life. What happens when you try to pitch a pyramid scheme to the sharks on Shark Tank? Andy Nayakis appeared on Dragon's Den, which is the British version of Shark Tank, and asked for an investment of $175,000 for his business named Lioness. He claimed Lioness to be a cashback card where users would get 20 to 40% back on any purchase, which is obviously impossible. According to Andy's business model, he sat at the top and investors profited every time they brought someone new into the business. Once Andy claimed that the investors would earn their share of the pie by getting users to sign up for the network, it became clear that Lioness was neither a service nor a product. The whole pitch fell apart when Andy claimed that his company hadn't been able to return a single dollar. Arlene, one of the investors, could easily visualize how the business model was forming a pyramid. In truth, Andy was luring the investors into a pyramid scheme. The large amounts of returns he promised the investors never really existed. Your house is probably worth more than the house of Elon Musk. That's right, the world's richest man lives in a $50,000 house. Elon's house is so tiny that it can be transported on a trailer and assembled in just 1 hour. The house is built by Boxable, a company dedicated to solving the housing crisis with affordable and compact casitas. The Boxable house is extremely energy efficient as it's made with insulation technology and utilizes LED lighting. In just 400 square feet of space, the house includes a kitchen, bathroom, and a small lounge. The house also features a dual-sided TV, a washing machine, and various other electrical appliances and necessities. Elon's tiny house is located on the SpaceX launch site in Boca Chica, Texas, and Elon actually rents the house from SpaceX. People considered it a joke when Elon tweeted in 2020 saying, "I will own no house." But he lived up to his word and sold all his real estate assets worth $100 million, and now lives in this $50K tiny house. The real reason why the McDonald's ice cream machines are always broken is not because the employees are lazy and do not bother cleaning the machines. It is way deeper and more corrupt than that. McDonald's requires franchise owners to use Taylor ice cream machines. With a variety of buttons and no text explaining their purpose, Taylor machines feature a confusing interface. Moreover, the machines have been reported to show unclear error signals, giving no clues about the actual error. As a consequence, these machines break down frequently. However, the catch is, according to their contract, franchise owners are only allowed to call Taylor technicians for fixing a Taylor ice cream machine. A leaked invoice showed that Taylor technicians charged $144 for just 30 minutes and up to $400 for every additional 15 minutes of repairing. Moreover, 25% of Taylor's revenue is generated from repair services. To conclude, Taylor intentionally keeps its ice cream machines prone to breakdowns, thus profiting from the inevitable repairs. This couple sold their company for $850 million and bought it back just 5 years later for $1 million. In 2005, Michael and Sochi Birch launched Bebo. It was an early social media site that competed aggressively with Facebook and MySpace. It was able to amass 45 million users, which caught the attention of struggling giant AOL. AOL dropped $850 million to buy Bebo in an attempt to stay relevant. However, it quickly became clear that Bebo would not be able to compete with upstarts like Facebook and Twitter. Just 2 years after being valued at nearly $1 billion, AOL sold Bebo for a price of $10 million. When the company that bought Bebo filed for bankruptcy a few years later, the founders swooped back in and bought the company for just $1 million. They proceeded to turn Bebo into a live streaming website and sold it to Twitch in 2019 for $25 million. Today we're going to be talking about how The Wizard of Oz is actually considered a cursed movie. Judy, who was only 17, was drugged and molested during the filming of the movie. There has been countless amounts of reports that she was molested and sexually harassed by both the Munchkin actors and studio executives. Next, the actress that plays the Wicked Witch got horrifically burned during filming. During the scene where the Wicked Witch escapes Munchkin Land in a plume of smoke, the pyrotechnics team accidentally set off the explosion a little too early. This led to the actress's broom hair, and makeup to catch on fire. Medics had to use alcohol to remove her toxic makeup, which was extremely painful due to her burns. Genius people who beat the system. Up until 2019, women were not allowed to attend soccer matches in Iran. But in 2018, these 5 girls successfully snuck into a championship soccer game disguised as men. Next, some schools don't allow guys and girls to be in their dorm rooms together, but this couple came up with a very creative solution to still hang out and watch movies together. Next, a mayor in Brazil prohibited bar owners from setting tables on the sidewalk, so the bar owners came up with an amazing solution that honestly looks pretty dangerous but also fun. Lastly, this man from Turkey was banned from his favorite soccer team stadium for a year, but he wasn't going to let that stop him from missing an important game. So he rented a crane and raised himself high enough so he could see the game, and he even led the crowd in a chant. Genius people who beat the system. A girls' college had a rule that said you can't have carved pumpkins in your dorm room, but the rule didn't say anything about pineapples, so she went ahead and carved one of those. Next, this guy's new job required a photo of him in a suit for their website, but since he doesn't own a suit, he just photoshopped his face over this guy's face, and honestly, it looks pretty real, so I can't blame him. Next, this sign says no bicycle riding, rollerblading, roller skating, skateboarding, or scooter riding, but it doesn't say no unicycling, so he isn't exactly breaking the rules. Next, these signs say that if you park on this side, you have to pay for parking, and if you park on the other side, you will get towed. So this guy parked in between both of the signs, so he doesn't have to do either. That's pure genius. Next, a guy posted this photo online and said whenever he parks illegally, he puts a fake ticket on his windshield so the cops won't give him a real one. That's pretty creative. Genius people who beat the system. First up, a class of students were required to pick a Marvel character and then write a resume and cover letter pretending to be them. A student thought of the perfect idea and picked Groot, and since all he says is, "I am Groot," that's what he put for everything. Next, a girl's mom locked her phone in the bottom drawer because she misbehaved, but her daughter realized that all she had to do was take out the top drawer and she could get her phone back. Next, a girl's dad went to Vegas for 5 days and put a camera in the living room to make sure she didn't have any parties. But the girl wasn't going to let that stop her, so she came up with this pretty creative solution. Next, this parking spot says only green vehicles can park there, but I think the owner of this car took that a little too serious. Next, this kid was playing a game on his laptop when his mom told him to go play outside, so he literally grabbed his laptop and played outside. Genius people who beat the system. This student was only allowed to have a 1-page cheat sheet, so they wrote a whole page of notes in blue pen and another page in red pen. They then brought 3D glasses to class, so when they look through the blue side, they can see the red pen, and when they look through the red side, they can see the blue pen. Next, a couple's landlord said that they couldn't paint the walls in their apartment, so they got hundreds of paint strips and covered the walls with them. Next, a teacher wouldn't allow students to eat in class, so a kid filled this empty lip balm with cheese so he could sneak it in. Next, this kid was asked to name the country that owns Greenland. Hint, it's not Greenland, so he put not Greenland and the teacher actually marked it right. Next, this kid's mom told him that food wasn't allowed in the living room and his tablet wasn't allowed in the kitchen, so it's safe to say that he beat the system. Biggest movie mistakes you never noticed. First up in the movie Zootopia, there's one obvious mistake that most people have never noticed. In this scene where Judy is on the phone with her parents, you can clearly see that the time says 8:40 p.m. But then just a couple of seconds later, when she puts her phone down, you can see it says 9:44 p.m. How does that even happen? Next, in the movie Inside Out, there's one mistake I'm shocked made the final cut. In this scene where Riley is running through her living room, you can see a white cable running along the floor. But just moments later, when we see the cable again, all of a sudden it's black. For something like that to happen, the editing team would have to reanimate the cable to be a different color, but why would they do that? Next up is Big Hero 6, and the mistake in this one is very similar to the last one. In this scene where Hero meets Professor Callahan, you can see his shirt is blue, but when he reaches out, it turns red, and then it turns back to blue again. I honestly have no words for that one. This European general may not be widely known in America, but he was one of the most impressive generals to have ever lived. Jan Žižka was a Czech general born in 1360 who led forces against 3 crusades and never lost a single battle. He was such a badass they made a blockbuster action movie about him called Medieval. It's an R-rated, gritty, violent, and entertaining movie starring Ben Foster and Michael Caine that is a definite must-watch. His armies fought with makeshift weapons to defeat heavily armed opponents who always vastly outnumbered his own troops. His tactics were unorthodox and innovative, to say the least. He essentially created the medieval version of the tank, 500 years before the tank was invented. The armored war wagons he used allowed his troops to defend from oncoming cavalry and infantry attacks. Oh, and he won his battles with only one good eye since he lost vision in one early in his life. If that's not impressive enough, he remained undefeated on the battlefield after going completely blind in both eyes later in his life. Make sure you go and see Medieval in theaters this weekend. Will humans ever be able to teleport? Well, believe it or not, teleportation is actually already possible, and I don't mean theoretically possible, but actually possible. The bad news is, it's a little bit different than what is shown in movies and TV shows. It isn't full-on human teleportation, but rather it is quantum teleportation, which is the transfer of information. It lets us transfer information on the quantum level between things that are not physically linked, meaning we could potentially use this technology to teleport the entire molecular makeup of an entire human being, and use that perfect blueprint to build an exact copy somewhere else far away, which is basically teleportation. But there's actually an easy way to teleport right now if you want.